Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. Okay, so today's video is one that I actually got this idea from Elliot Brooks. She is a fantasy booktuber who I really love. And she was doing this, but it was worst trends in fantasy. And I thought, you know, I'd really like to bring that concept over to the romance world, so that's what I am doing. So I asked you on Instagram to tell me what you think the worst romance trends are that are happening right now, and boy, y'all delivered a lot. It was so fun and also really interesting to see your responses. So I have enough to do a two-part video. This is just going to be going over some of them, so let me know if this is something you'd like to see another part to this video, and I would definitely be more than happy to do that. So, okay, we're not going to go in any order. I have tried to like group some of them together if they were similar, or, you know, I did get a lot of like the same type of complaints. So, okay, here we go. So the first one, something that I thought was really interesting because a lot of you said this, actually, not maybe this exact phrase, but this sentiment, and it is judging the quality of a book based on spicy scenes. And I let me just tell you how happy I was to see that that was in there so often, because literally I feel the same way. I get so frustrated when the quality of a book, of a romance, is equated with how spicy it is. I just cannot even handle that. And I'm not saying that that shouldn't be included in your personal rating, but unless it's erotica, I don't really feel like that should be a huge factor on if the book is a quality book, if the romance is a quality romance. I mean, obviously, the sex scenes, the spicy scenes, they play an important part in the story, but to act like it's the only thing that means this is a quality book, I think is so incorrect, and I truly hate that trend. I hate it so bad. So I really liked that one. Okay, so now this is another one that I thought was really interesting, and it is not having high expectations for romance because it's romance. And I'm not entirely sure what they meant through this, but I think that you could interpret that in a lot of ways. One of them, I think, is not having high expectations for maybe the writing quality, the plotting, or how maybe like emotional traumatic issues are handled. I feel like that is such a common complaint that I hear within the romance community. So within people who actively read romance, a lot of the time I hear them say it themselves, that I don't really have high expectations because it's a romance. And I'm like, why? Like, you know, I feel like for so many years, decades, romance readers and writers have been fighting to be able to act like our genre is valid, and I don't necessarily think that that means all stuff serious all the time, but I feel like if you're going to act like you don't need to have high quality or high expectations in your romance for how trauma is handled, for how the writing is handled, for how elements of the story are put together, I'm just sort of like, I hate that trend. I will say I don't know that this is necessarily a trend. Well, I do feel like it is, actually. Maybe like something that's not talked about a lot, but especially if somebody is being critical of romance books, then I hear the common response is, well, I'm not expecting that much because it's a romance from someone who reads romance. And I'm just sort of like, what? Come on now. You love this genre enough to read it and talk about it. Let's not act like we don't have high expectations for this genre. And inevitably they do. It's just a different one than what other people are talking about. And so this, again, brings me full circle to the thing that I feel most frustrated with in romance lately, is that just because you are looking for things in a romance doesn't mean that is the only thing that should be considered if a romance is good or not. That's your personal metric, you know? I mean, I fully recognize that the things that I want in romance are not widely loved or accepted or even desired in their romance, but for me personally, as someone who has a deep love for romance for years, I need those things. I need those things, or I'm gonna rake your book over the coals, and I am not sorry about that, you know? So that was a really interesting one, and I definitely agree with that for sure. And I would love to hear more people within more romance readers who are actively reviewing, and I'm not just talking about BookTube or Book Talk or whatever, but I feel like there are definitely reviewers out there like that, but I do wish that more romance readers would not say things like, well, it's just a romance, I don't have high expectations, and I'm just like, you can't talk about our genre like that, you just can't, you know? I mean, I watch a wide variety of BookTube, and I was watching a video, I'm not going to say who, but it's somebody I love the way they talk about books, and I noticed that they did the same thing where they were reading romance, and then the way they talked about romance was so different than how they talked about their fantasy books or their science fiction books. And it was very clear in the way that they were talking that they think romance is kind of silly, that it's not like a serious genre, and a lot of it is, okay? Dino Shifters, I'm looking at you. A lot of it is silly, but that's not all that it is. And it feels like, to me, what I see happening, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, is you have like the overly silly, overly smutty, overly like out there books, maybe like alien romance or monster romance or, you know, whatever, that people think that's the majority of what romance is. And then on the other side, you have somebody like Emily Henry, who a lot of romance readers are hesitant to even call her a romance writer because there's so much external stuff happening to the characters that isn't related to the romance at all, but that's more palatable for a reader who's new to romance or maybe someone who enjoys like a more literary approach. And I just feel like there's more to it. It's not just the extremes on either side, you know. I think that Kennedy Ryan hits it really well in the middle. Yeah, I'm going to bring her up, I'm going to do that all the time. But I think there are a lot of other authors that hit that middle line really, really well. I think Liz Tom Ford is another one who does that. So I think that in order to really expect other people, other reviewers to take romance seriously, we have to do that too. And it's okay if we like the silly, I don't even want to call it silly, if we like the stuff that seems more on the fringes, more on the extreme side of suspending your disbelief. That's more than okay. I love some of those books too. And I also enjoy a lot of other books that are on this side that are more literary, that are more like lit fiction type of things. I was going to say women's fiction, but I feel like we're getting away from saying that, you know? So I feel like, I don't even know how I ended up here, but I don't like the way that people who have just a taste of romance seem to consider, and even within romance, that there's like two branches. There's like serious romance, and then there's like silly romance, and I'm like, that's a range. There's great romance all the way across, you know? And anyway, so yeah, this is something obviously that I'm passionate about because I talked a really long time about that, but I would really like that trend to go away as romance has become more commonly accepted. I think with the rise of book talk, really, where spicy romance, I feel like everybody is reading spicy romance, every woman, every young woman, and they're talking about it, and I love that. But I think with the rise of that, we're seeing other reviewers who are reading and partaking and reviewing romance, and I hear those terms thrown around all the time. Like, it's not serious, it's just romance, and within the romance community itself. So, I don't know. Those are my thoughts about that. I do wish that it wouldn't be considered like something that is a bad thing to have high expectations for romance, because you better believe that I do, and I know a lot of other romance readers and reviewers do as well. Okay, so now a lot of the things that were worst trends in romance have to do with the steamy scenes, and y'all are definitely my people. So this one says, when the point of view changes to the man and he talks non-stop about how much he wants to sleep with her and how nice her T&A are. And I could not agree more with this. I absolutely despise that. I hate that so much. I find that so distasteful. I would love so much if more authors, and I say more authors because I've only read a few authors who write like that, and as soon as I see that's how they're portraying their men and their point of view, I just DNF it, and I'm like, this author's not for me. This is probably something foundational to their writing style, and I absolutely hate it, so DNF, gonna not read that anymore. But I truly wish that, you know, we talk so often about, I think it was Becky who said this to me in a message, and I've said it in a vlog before too, we talk a lot about how ridiculous it is when men try to write women, you know, they breast boobily down the stairs and all that other good stuff. But truthfully, a lot of women authors do the same thing to men, where they overly stereotype the way that they're thinking about the woman in a romance, where you know love is coming in and all they're thinking about is how much they want to sleep with her and how great her TNA are. And I'm just sort of like, I don't know exactly how I'm supposed to feel that this is romantic, that this is love. Lust, sure, absolutely, but that's never what I'm there for, you know? So anyway, that one was a really good one, and I could not agree more with that. I absolutely hate that so bad. Okay, following along with that is Sex with No Emotional Buildup. 100% agree. 100% agree. I feel like this, again, is so much a marketing ploy so that, you know, like TikToks and things can be made about that. But also there is a certain type of reader who really loves that type of book, and I feel like it's sort of overtaking the more romantic emotional development, and I don't like that at all, so I agree with you. Okay, so now these next two are really good, actually. Only having tropes in a book and no story plot. Writing for tropes and not even doing it accurately. Looking at you, enemies to lovers. No plot, just vibes. Like, oh my gosh. So those were 3 separate ones that were sent in, but they're all kind of similar, where, yeah, only having tropes in a book and no plot and story. And this is why I never pick up a book just on tropes. I never, ever, 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 ever do that. Well, I mean, maybe sometimes, but truthfully, a trope isn't going to sell me on a book. It's just not going to, unless it's something that you feel like is catered specifically to me, like the type of hero. Like, that's how I got sold on The Right Move by Liz Tom Fortis, because people, when they recommended it to me, they're like, you are really going to love this book. It's very romantic. And so I'm like, okay, great. But romantic isn't really a trope in romance, although I feel like it kind of should be, because we're really moving away in a lot of books from romantic books, and I don't like that. But again, these are just my opinions, and but a lot of you agreed with me, so I was happy about that. So yeah, I really hate how tropes are thrown in just to sell a book when they really don't have anything at all to add to the story or the characters. It's just like a trope in there, and why? You know, it's fine to include tropes in your book. All books are made up of tropes in some respect. But you gotta give it enough care and attention that it's not just a trope-filled book of nonsense. Like, I can think of a fantasy romance book I read earlier this year that was absolutely that. Okay, moving on. So, writing for tropes and not even doing it accurately, looking at you, enemies to lovers. Yeah, I think we can all agree that enemies to lovers is so overused, and they're never true enemies. They maybe just dislike each other, or maybe they're just like pissy at each other, or maybe they're just like, they don't even really know each other, but they've decided, this person, I don't like you, you know? Like, I think it needs to be like, I don't like you to lovers. That's really what it is. It's not even enemies to lovers or rivals to lovers. Most of them are, I don't like you to lovers, and where's the tension there, you know? I mean, the reason that enemies to lovers work so well is because of how tension-filled that situation is. You have these two people who are enemies, literal enemies, but they have this desire and they have maybe a mutual respect, like tension city, and I love it so much. I think one book that did that really well is, I'm trying to actually think, Ivan by Sophie Lark, I think, did that really well. But, okay, moving along. No plot, just vibes. This one made me laugh out loud because, like, seriously, the amount of times that I hear people say, I didn't really pay attention to that. It was just all vibes, and I'm like, what? Like, I just can't. I cannot. I mean, at this point in my reading life, I have a very difficult time getting on board with a book that is only vibes. Like, why do I care about this story, about this character? I feel like when people say only vibes, they don't really understand why they like the book, and so that's what they say is, maybe they've heard someone say it doesn't have a plot, it's just vibes, and so they're like, yeah, cool, I like it, I'm not sure why I like it, and that's okay. It's okay to not know why you like things, right? I mean, I've talked about it, and I'm going to say it again, I absolutely love Watership Down, and I know why I love that book, but a lot of it, it's not vibes, but there is a certain aspect of that book that is sort of outside of what I typically like, and that is very mysterious to me, so I recognize the feeling of, I really like this book, but I don't know why, but I think that that is what really creates great bookish content, and I think that's what creates good book reviews, and I think that all of that drives towards creating better books, creating romances that are, I guess, like higher quality and have the ability to reach a broader audience. And like, I don't know, I get saying this and then I get feeling like, well, you know, there's a book out there for every reader. Every reader has a certain type of book that they like, and I think that the problem is really just that we're seeing a lot of these trends rise up and sort of overtake the books that are coming out. And for a lot of people who've probably been reading romance for many years, they find them unsatisfying because it's a different direction. It's not what we're expecting. It sort of feels like it's breaking off into new areas of marketability, which may result in sales, but I think also will result in disappointed readers. So, okay, last one. Okay, I'm picking this one. I actually am going to pick two of these. I have enough to do another video, so let me know if you definitely want to see another one for sure, because there are some good ones in here, but I gotta keep this video short for today. So this one is alternate covers that's just a bunch of flowers, like for sure. And honestly, like I don't really have a problem necessarily with a flower on the cover, because I mean, if it's really beautifully photographed and designed, I think it can work really well. I think Katharina Mara has really pretty flower photo covers, but if you're going to sell it as an alternate cover or as a new cover, like the new Priest and the new Sarah Kate, like I don't like either of those. I feel like I just don't like them. I don't like them at all, and I agree. We'll leave it at that. Okay, so now this next one. I was so happy to see this in here. This came up a couple times, actually. It's age gaps with an 18 and 19-year-old heroine. That's a child. Like, for sure. I could not agree more. That is a literal child. And let's not even talk about younger heroines, okay? Because absolutely not. Jail. Straight to jail. Immediate. How... Again, this is me. Obviously, my opinions. But I truly will never understand the appeal of this type of book, you know? I mean, maybe when I was 18 or 19, yeah, sure, maybe when I was 18, 19 to my mid-20s, I probably could have gotten on board with this. I'm sure I could have, you know? But I feel like the more that I have lived and experienced life and relationships and love and, you know, human interaction, the more difficult it is for me to suspend my disbelief about some of the concepts that are so popular among romance books right now. And I think that is partially because a lot of the books that are trending right now, that are full of these romance trends, are definitely aimed towards a new to romance young reader. And I am not that reader, you know, but I will say there are plenty of seasoned romance readers who still really enjoy these tropes. So I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with them, but I do feel like we are approaching a time where I am like, I'm ready to say goodbye to these. I'm ready forever to say goodbye to a child and an older man. Could we please put that in the grave permanently? Jail. Straight to jail. So, alright, thank you for watching this video. I know I got a little sassy at times, but I hope you enjoyed it. This was really fun. I have some really had some really great responses. I was so happy that I posted this, and I posted it on Instagram. I know not all of you are on Instagram because there's, you know, it's not necessarily you're commenting it and putting your name out there. So if you are watching this and you have a worst trends in romance you would like me to cover in a future video, you are more than welcome to email it to me or to leave it in a comment down below, and I'll include it in my next video. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next one.